Yo, what it do, YouTube? It is your boy Culture Shock. We're back with another video, and I know it's been a while, but I got to thinking, what did we learn about the Indianapolis Colts in the 2021 season? The Indianapolis Colts, they were a game away from making the playoffs and everything, but I think you learned a lot about this team, and some of you probably don't even understand, but when you look at last season, it wasn't a total upset. I mean, of course, we didn't make the playoffs, so some people may think that way. But if you sit back and evaluate this team and you look at all the things that they could have done, you start to realize that this team could win way more games than what we expect. And I'm going to tell you why. Starting off with the quarterback position at Carson Wentz, right? So Carson Wentz, I would say, had a way better season than he had previously in Philadelphia. So that is an upgrade. Because if we were getting the Carson Wentz that we seen in Philly, this season would have been way worse than what we expected, right? So, granted, we give him credit for that, for actually, going back a little bit to himself. So I mean, he could have been better. I mean, but he wasn't the worst thing. Like I said, he could have been better. But I mean, for all the things that he's been through, this is a step up from what he was done previously. So credit to Carson Wentz on that. Of course, they're probably going to be bringing him back next year. I think it's all out there now. A lot of people are always talking about, oh, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, if they're available, go get them. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be available. So you can scratch that out the playbook. So yeah, if you give him another run, if he does think it up, hey, go get a backup quarterback. I don't know if they're going to go with Sam Ellinger as the guy, but as of granted right now, get you a backup, veteran experience, and just try to lead the way right there. It's just in case. One of those just in case quarterbacks, because you always need one of those. Moving forward. Oh, another thing about Carson Wentz, I do think he can improve, and he is my quarterback, so I don't have a choice. I'm not rooting for another team. So moving forward, the running back position, Jonathan Taylor. Everyone expected him to emerge onto the scene. I didn't expect him to be that good, but I did have him as top 3 running backs going into this season, and he happened to do that and become the best running back. So that is a huge upgrade for the Indianapolis Colts. Another thing we take away is the production of Nyheim Hines was very limited. I don't know what it was this year, but we didn't use him as we were supposed to. A lot of people had high hopes on Nyheim Hines, especially after getting that contract. He was terrible in special teams. Running the football is like he can never really get his stride, so it was a little bit off. And then on the receiving core, I feel like we could have used him way more when the wide receivers was going through that drought. I feel like we could have used him more. So the production rate for Hines definitely lowered. And that had a lot to do with the game plan. The game plan wasn't balanced. So I feel like it kind of negated his stats and his production. So that's another thing you could look at for Nyheim Hines safety. Moving in forward, with all these games talking about, when we slowed down and we couldn't really figure it out, some of those players that Nyheim Hines was in and they couldn't really figure it out, you started to wonder, what if we actually use Marlon Mack or Dion Jackson? If we would have used Dion Jackson instead of Nyheim Hines on certain players, I feel like we could have got that spurt that we were looking for. Because Jonathan Taylor's a dog. He was going to get his regardless. But when we had to bring in that second running back and Hines consistently couldn't find a groove, I feel like we should have used another running back, and I think they would have used that spurt. Now, some of you, of course, would have said, oh, well, we did try to use them. No. We know Marlon Mack didn't want to be there. We know he wanted to change the scenery. We get it. But when Jackson's on the field, I think Jackson could have exploded at any moment in any of those games that we needed, especially Jacksonville. Why? Because nobody has film on this guy except for the Colts. The Colts and the Colts fans know what he did, and I think he had a little bit of potential. I think he could have exploded on a certain amount of plays. Now, going to this wide receiver core. The wide receiver core was abysmal. I want to say credit to all the wide receivers that did give it a shot. It could have been better. Michael Pittman Jr. had himself a very good year, so credit to him. Shout out to Desmond Patton for actually making some plays at the end of the season, especially that Christmas game. Mike Strachan is definitely going to be active next year. We all know this. A lot of people are talking about the healthy scratch situation with him. It's just because he got to get his spot. He has to earn it, right? I don't think he was fully developed. I know going into next year he's going to get some more reps and he's going to actually see the field, and we're going to start to see what we should have been seeing this year. So, moving on from Mike Strawn, I think the wide receiver core definitely needs another guy in that wide receiver room. I definitely think we need an extra person. There's nothing wrong with the wide receivers we have now, but I think the extra guy, maybe one in free agency or getting another one out the draft, I think that'll actually boost the wide receiver room. For Pascal's sake and all those guys, I mean, the game plan had a lot to do with the struggling for the offense in general. The running game, and the passing game, it just wasn't balanced. So I think that's why you've seen a struggle in the wide receiver room. For the tight ends, it's a huge question mark. We definitely need a number one tight end. I personally think we do not have one. Of course, Jack Doyle is roaming around retirement. He was a solid guy, but he isn't a tight end one in my opinion anymore. He still was a solid piece, do not get me wrong. But I think we definitely need a number one tight end for the Colts. Us knowing Carson Wentz that loves to target the tight ends, our tight ends was not good enough to move the chain. Marley Cox had plenty amount of chances to get those plays, and he just couldn't figure it out. Jack Doyle was reliable in certain games, give him credit, good run blocker. I think Kyle Granson will definitely step up next season, and I think he's going to take that role and take it among himself and actually be productive what he has going forward. Kyle Granson definitely had a few reps, and he definitely showed me some flashes of what he can do in the future. So that's a good sign to see for Colts fans. Moving for the offensive line, I definitely think we need another tackle because we all know what's going on in that situation. Of course, granted, he's coming off of a huge injury, and he needs that on his ability to block. That is a huge injury, so I wasn't really having high hopes on him going into the season. He did do good on run blocking. I will give him credit to that, but overall in general, we do need an upgrade or a swing left tackle just in case in certain plays. So moving forward from there, Mark, we got to talk about the right guard position. I'm pretty sure we'll probably be bringing him back if he gets a pay cut because I think he can have a way better year than what he did this year. So I think he'll be coming back for sure. Center, left guard, and right tackle is all pretty much secured. Moving on to the defensive line, we do need a solid edge rush, even though I do see potential in Hurricane, Dio, Kwity Paye, and those boys. I definitely think we do need another edge because it's still not efficient enough as we will want it to be. They've shown their flashes, granted, but I still think we're missing that piece. Tyquan Lewis is coming off that injury. It's going to be a huge question mark where he can go back to his natural self. So I do think we need a veteran presence on the edge because we definitely missed that with Autry and Houston being gone because they definitely made an impact when they weren't there. When they were there, sorry. So we do need another veteran edge rush moving into this offseason. The linebacker core is definitely it's another question mark. I think they did a step up with the loss of Anthony Walker Jr. this offseason. I think they had a pretty solid year. It could have been better, the coverage thing going on in that scenario, but I think Bobby Okereke filled that role pretty good, and I think Darius Leonard had one of the best seasons of his career. Moving on, Zaire Franklin and those boys, of course, they could have been better, but I mean, they were just pretty much playing with the cards they were dealt. So, moving forward with the linebacker group, I think we're pretty solid in that. We'll probably draft one late in the draft or in the middle of the draft this offseason. So I don't really think we're going to go target one in free agency. But moving on to the cornerback room, Xavier Rhodes, I'm pretty sure he's probably going to be done in Indianapolis. He had a very off year. He was up and down. I wouldn't be shocked if he retired, but I mean, he had a very good year his first year in Indianapolis, but this year was just very rough. It was very rough. He had some key plays, don't get me wrong. That Buffalo game, he had a very few key plays later on in the season, but all year he just couldn't figure it out. The emergence of Isaiah Rodgers and Rocky Sin definitely shows the future of the cornerback room for the Indianapolis Colts is very high hopes. They got a good ceiling, so shout out to those two guys. Kenny Moore, he's going to get better. Late in the season, he had a lot of plays where he had to be put in a certain scenario out of his position of what he usually does, so he got cooked. But I'm pretty sure in the offseason he's going to work on that. Hey, man, he's a Pro Bowler. And, he's had a very good year besides the end of it where he was put out of position due to all those injuries in the cornerback room. So I wouldn't put it all on Kenny Moore, even though we know how good he is at his position. But I think he was playing out of position, so it was very rough for him. So I wasn't surprised the way it looked. The safety room, I do think we need another safety. The safeties has been banged up this year, man. It's tough. I just can't wait for Julian Blackmon to come back. I do think we need another safety because Sendejo's not cutting it, even though he's a very good tackler. But when it comes to coverage, he stinks. Granted, sorry, but it's just me being honest. I think he could work on that too. It's all about improvement at the end of the day. George Odom, I think he needs to come back. He has shown me what he wanted this whole year is to play safety. And when he played safety, he made a lot of key plays. So shout out to George Odom. But yeah, Kari Willis is a dog. Julian Blackmon, we can't wait for him to come back. But I do think we need another safety. My odds are probably drafting one out of the draft like we usually do. Don't think we're getting a safety out of free agency. So the kicker is special teams. I know Specs is definitely going to be the kicker moving forward. Hot Rod is our guy. We know that. Ashton Doolin's a dog in special teams. Overall, in general, I think this team will actually be more battle tested next year than we are this year. It's going to be a fun ride because every team is getting better, and we're keeping this team together. So that means we got to keep this fight and moving forward, stay together and just build. Do not blow the team up because that'll bring you nowhere. I do not want another quarterback this year. I don't. This would be the first time the Colts will have a consistent quarterback in 2 seasons. We had 4 years, 4 different quarterbacks. If we can keep the same quarterback, I would love to see how it turns out. I will. Do we miss Phillip Rivers? Absolutely. We should have given him another run. We know that. But Carson Wentz is going to get his chance. He's going to redeem himself. We know that. If he struggles, I'm pretty sure we're going to probably pull the plug and get someone else. But we're not hoping for that. We hope he can figure it out. We really do because this season wasn't terrible. We were 1 game away. 1 game away from making the playoffs. If we're going to put it on the last game against Jacksonville, you guys were not watching the Colts football. We're going to put it on all those 4 to 5 games where we had those leads and blew them at the beginning of the year. Those are the reasons why we didn't make the playoffs. It's because we blew all those leads during the year. And granted, we needed that game at the end to win and couldn't get it done. We're going to blame it on those games. We're not going to blame it on Jacksonville. We're going to blame it on all those leads that we blown. But you guys let me know your thoughts about the Colts this year. Let me know your thoughts about them moving forward and in the offseason. Let me know some players you want drafted. All these things in the comment section. This is Marcus, and until next time, you've been Culture Shock.